The Mummy reboot finally showed its hand, and the first poster alone already tells you a lot. The official title is Lee Cronin's The Mummy, very director forward, almost like they want you to forget every previous version right away. And then the first trailer dropped, and yeah, this is not the swashbuckling adventure vibe at all. This thing leans hard into horror. Super dark imagery, barely any exposition, quick unsettling flashes that don't really explain what's going on, but you can clearly feel that ritualistic, almost cursed energy all over it. It's the kind of trailer that gives you mood first and answers later, and honestly, that already says more than any long plot description ever could. What's interesting is how closely the trailer lines up with both the official synopsis and the leaked plot details that have been floating around for a while. You can see hints of ancient rituals, something tied to the desert, something that shouldn't have been disturbed. It feels intimate and small scale, but at the same time, deeply unsettling. The poster spotlights a question: what happened to Katie? Hinting at a female lead wrapped in bandages, her face shadowed in a cracked sarcophagus, evoking a personal tragedy over grand curses. And if they really pull this off, this could quietly become one of those surprise genre hits. Because let's be real, movie monsters are slowly crawling back from the dead in a serious way. You've got Guillermo del Toro circling Frankenstein again, Luc Besson revisiting Dracula, and overall there's this renewed interest in classic monsters, but treated with style, atmosphere, and actual intent instead of just spectacle. That's where Universal completely messed up years ago. Their whole Dark Universe plan looked good on paper. Big shared universe, iconic monsters, massive stars like Tom Cruise and Johnny Depp. But the execution was totally wrong. They tried to turn these horror icons into generic blockbuster superheroes with jump scares sprinkled on top. The Tom Cruise Mummy was the perfect example of that mistake. It wasn't scary, it wasn't fun in the adventurous way either, and worst of all, it felt cynical. Not because the story was terrible on its own, but because the approach was fundamentally broken. They wanted a billion-dollar universe before earning even a single truly great movie, and Universal hasn't really learned since then. Their recent Wolfman attempt just collapsed. Nobody connected with it, and again, it came down to misunderstanding the genre. Either they rewrite monster lore so much that it loses its identity, or they force it into the wrong tone. Horror needs confidence. You can't half commit. That's why Lee Cronin's Mummy feels like such a sharp turn. This is a full reboot. No nostalgia safety net, no Brendan Fraser vibes, no adventure comedy, just straight up horror, at least on paper. Filming wrapped back in October with a solid cast including Jack Reynor and Lia Costa as the parent. And that's not accidental. James Wan is producing through Atomic Monster, and Wan knows this space better than almost anyone. Whether you love or hate his style, the guy understands how to build tension, how to sell fear, and how to make horror profitable without watering it down. Another huge detail people keep overlooking is that this movie isn't even being handled by Universal. It's Warner Brothers through New Line Cinema, with Blumhouse and Atomic Monster backing it. That alone makes it fascinating, because Warner has been way more willing lately to let filmmakers go dark, weird, and risky, especially outside of their superhero stuff. But despite the strong first impression, there's a lot of concerning noise coming out of test screenings. According to Feature First, the movie, which reportedly runs close to 2 hours, tested extremely poorly. So poorly, in fact, that James Wan himself allegedly walked out halfway through a screening. If that's even half true, that's insane. Cronin came off Evil Dead Rise with solid momentum and goodwill, but it sounds like he might have pushed things too far this time. Rumors swirl about major reshoots or a full retool to fix pacing and tone issues, potentially dropping any overt mummy ties. There's one specific scene that keeps getting mentioned, and it's already infamous. Apparently there's a moment where a scorpion crawls into someone's mouth, destroys their vocal cords, and then another character literally shoves their fingers down that person's throat and presses on the cords so they can speak. That's not spooky, that's hardcore body horror, straight out of Cronin's Evil Dead playbook where he twisted apartment living into nightmare fuel. And if the whole movie leans that far into grotesque territory, it suddenly makes sense why Warners might want to distance it from the Mummy brand entirely. Plot-wise, this version is way more grounded and tragic than anything we've seen before. The story follows two parents, played by Jack Reynor and Lia Costa, whose lives are shattered when their daughter Katie mysteriously vanishes after being cursed by a strange woman. Years pass, nearly a decade, and then a plane carrying a sarcophagus crashes. Inside is their daughter, now grown but clearly not the same person, physically present but carrying the spirit of an ancient Egyptian mummy. Whatever came back isn't fully human anymore, and it brings a dark force straight into the heart of the family. That's the emotional core Cronin seems obsessed with. Family trauma first, ancient horror second. The leaked synopsis goes even further. The father eventually realizes that his daughter is carrying the spirit of an ancient Egyptian mummy inside her. When the evil starts threatening their second child, he's forced to attempt a dangerous ritual to stop it, even if that means becoming a monster himself. That's a wild direction, and honestly, it barely connects to the traditional mummy mythology at all. No Imhotep-style villain, no epic curses spanning empires. This is more like possession horror wrapped in ancient imagery, with the sarcophagus crash unleashing supernatural chaos that defies logic. Cronin himself has been pretty upfront about his influences. He's compared his approach to Spielberg and Fincher, which sounds insane until you actually break it down. He's talked about Poltergeist and Seven specifically, not because they're similar genres, but because of how grounded they feel emotionally. Seven works because you believe in the characters long before the horror overwhelms them. Poltergeist works because it's about a family first. Cronin wants that same intimacy here. Scenes at home, family dynamics, relationships slowly cracking under pressure. The horror doesn't just invade the world, it invades the household. Director's teaser message sets the tone. In ancient Egypt, dark spirits consumed the dead, and now it begins again. That's a bold swing for the Mummy of all franchises. Dive into the lore, and mummies started as real Egyptian preservation rituals for the afterlife, but Hollywood twisted them into undead horrors. The 1932 original has Imhotep, buried alive under the Hamdi curse for trying to resurrect his lost love, emerging to possess and destroy. Scarabs eat him eternally unless revived, granting sand control but cat phobia from underworld guardians. Dark Horse Comics adapt that faithfully, focusing on his unholy obsession reaching from the grave. This reboot flips it. No high priest villain, just a family vessel for the curse. As a fan who's devoured those comics, I see potential. Katie as a modern Ankhesenamun, her return echoing Imhotep's doomed romance, but internalized as possession. The scorpion scene screams scarab homage, vocal cords wrecked like the tongue cut in Hamdi, forcing guttural communication that builds dread. My theory, pulling from the lore, the ritual the dad performs mirrors Imhotep's reversal, sacrificing humanity to bind the spirit, maybe turning him into a secondary mummy guardian. But Cronin layers Evil Dead possession vibes, where the deadite force spreads like a virus. Imagine the second kid getting tendrils of sand under skin, mimicking scarabs burrowing. It's not empire toppling, it's domestic annihilation, where the household becomes the tomb. If they nail the tragedy, like Poltergeist's suburban haunt, it elevates beyond gore. Leaks say the curse starts with a sinister gift from the woman, perhaps an amulet tying to real Egyptian Ushabti figures meant to serve in afterlife, corrupted here into a spirit anchor. At the same time, there's this weird parallel reality where another Mummy project is happening. There are still plans floating around for a proper Mummy 4 with Fraser and Rachel Weisz returning, continuing that beloved storyline that already made over $1 billion worldwide and even spawned the Scorpion King spin-offs. Fraser confirmed he's waited 20 years for this, excited to deliver what fans want, directed by Radio Silence duo with a script tuning the third film's Dragon Mess. So we're at this crossroads where the Mummy can be either comforting nostalgia or pure nightmare fuel, and studios are trying both at once. That's why this movie is so fascinating, even with all the red flags. Test scores tanked hard R elements might get trimmed in reshoots before the April release, but Cronin's track record suggests he'll fight for vision. If it fails, it'll probably fail hard, alienating franchise fans. But if it works, if audiences actually connect with this darker, more brutal vision, possession invading a grieving home, dad's ritual echoing ancient sacrilege, it could redefine how classic monsters are handled going forward. Not as cinematic universes, not as blockbuster machines, but as raw horror stories with something to say. Think Hereditary meets The Exorcist in a sarcophagus, family bonds as the real curse breaker or breaker. And honestly, that's a risk worth taking. As a geek who's ranked every Universal monster era, from Boris Karloff's tragic Imhotep to Fraser's charm offensive, this could be the gut punch reset, proving mummies terrify best when the wrappings hide your own kid's face.